Hi folks, Josh Clark again. In this webinar, I will walk you through how to conduct the desk assessment portion of the RSA form using GIS. So I'm going to pull up the site assessment form here, and you'll see that I have filled out the resident information here. Again, reminding you that you have contacted your resident, you've sent out your initial email. So I've dropped in all of the information that I have here. And I'm going to take the address here, so 1476 Harwell Avenue, and I'm going to go to the county GIS. So as you'll remember, I'm going to try to go through this quickly. We have other GIS uh, resources that if you need them, just contact the office and we can get you connected to them. But I'm going to go to find address. I'm going to put in 1476 Harwell. Again, going slowly with this so that it pops up. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to hit search. And it's going to spit out a little yellow dot. And I'm going to zoom into that little yellow dot. So keep in mind that the point of the desk assessment is to get some ideas of what's going on site before you go out there. And it's also to help you produce a map or two that you can take with you. So I'm going to switch back to this. So the first thing that we're going to want to try to figure out here is what the watershed is for the site. So back on GIS, what I typically do when I'm looking at a site is the first thing is to turn on the parcel layer so that I know exactly what I'm looking at for this site. So again, we're in Crofton, we're on Harwell Avenue, and we can kind of see that the house itself is just kind of centered here. It's almost on a north-south axis, which is really good to know. That tells us that the front lawn or the front area here is probably going to be a little bit more sunny. The backyard's going to be a little bit more shady. And then we're going to go down to let's see here, watersheds. We're going to turn that guy on, and it tells us that we're in the Little Patuxent watershed. So I'm going to go back to the form, and I'm going to type in Little Patuxent. As you get that information, keep in mind as you're thinking through your observations that it might be a good idea if it's available to connect folks to local watershed organizations. That's one of the main points of kind of looking at this. So I'm going to turn the watershed link or the layer off here. I'm going to turn the sub watershed layer on here. We're going to see what it says. So if you remember from your GIS training for the sub watersheds, you might have to zoom out a little bit to find the watershed boundary. And always keep in mind that GIS gets a little angry if you go too quickly. I'm going to try to identify it just using the site as well here. So let's let it catch up with what we're doing here. I'm just going to highlight the area and hopefully it'll spit out the subwatershed for us. So the subwatershed comes up here. I'm going to dig into that. And it tells us it's the Crofton Gulf subwatershed. So you can go ahead and put that here. And then another thing to keep in mind is the distance to the nearest stream. The easiest way to do that, what I like to think about, is just zooming out until you see a waterway. You can see that there's a stream right back here, which is Crofton Gulf. So that makes sense because that's our subwatershed, right? And I am going to just go to my Tools tab. I'm going to use my measure line. I'm going to go from the house and try to get the straightest line to that just to get an idea. So this tells us it's about 216 feet. I'm going to go back there and notate that. And what this should really start to frame your reference is, if you're looking at something closer to major waterways, you might be looking at something in the critical area or even the 100-foot buffer. So it's always good to keep that in mind when you're looking at what you're trying to see on site. The next thing here is the expected soils on site. So I'm going to bring this back up. I'm going to escape from my measure tool. I'm going to go back to the map. I'm going to turn on the soils layer. I'm going to first turn off the subwatershed soil or subwatersheds layer. I'm going to turn on soils. So it's thinking here, you can see that the site itself is predominantly this orange color. And if you click on this guy here, that tells us that they're B soils, they're moderate to high infiltration. So you can expect on this site that you can get some good infiltration. Keep in mind as stewards, you should not be recommending certain infiltration practices that are in C or D soils because of their low infiltration rates. That's one really good thing to keep in mind as you're working through this. So what I'd like to do is just go and either change the color of the B or make it bold so that I remember that that we're looking at B soils here. Keep in mind too, when you're at residential homes, a lot of time fill dirt is brought in, and that changes what the soil makeup might be on site. That's why percolation tests and that sort of thing are really important. So we're going to try to figure out if this is on a well or septic. So I'm going to turn off soils here. I'm going to go back up a little bit. I'm going to hit septic systems. And you'll see that nothing has actually shown up on the map here, which tells me that this is actually going to be city water and sewer. So I'm going to just bold those as well so I remember. I'm not going to go through every single piece of these, but the idea here is you're going to go back for the impervious surfaces. You're going to go under the urban features layer. You're going to turn it on. You're going to turn on your impervious surfaces. And that's going to break your site up into these different polygon shapes. There's a couple different ways to figure out how big things are. I'm going to just show you really quickly um, how to get the square footage of the house here. So you're going to use your identify tool and you're just going to kind of highlight the house here. So you'll see impervious surfaces jumps up here. It highlights what you highlighted so you know that you're looking at the building or the house. And then if you go down here to shape area, it tells us that the house is 1,714 square feet. So I would go where the house is and do, what did I say, 1,417 square feet. Or I'm sorry, 1,714 square feet. That's what I get for trying to jump back and forth here. But you would do the same thing for the driveway. If you see any outbuildings, sidewalk patios, you can change this up a little bit so you have an idea of what you're looking at when you go out on site. So the next thing that you're going to want to look at after you get the entire total of all of your impervious surface, and you're going to notate that at the end here, is the parcel size. So going back to GIS, you're going to go back to your map and your layers. I like to turn the impervious surfaces off for when I'm not using them because it's a really large layer and a lot of data and it slows everything down. And then I'm going to go back up to identify and I'm going to identify the parcel here. So I'm going to highlight within my area. You can see it highlighted the whole parcel. It brought up the tax account number. I'm going to hit that. I'm going to hit the property information, and this is going to take us to the SStat information on a different website. So while that's loading, I'm going to let that load. I'm just going to highlight here. So once you get the parcel size from the SStat information, you would then take your total impervious surface and then divide it by the square footage of your parcel size. And then that'll give you a decimal. You multiply that by 100, and that will give you your percent impervious surface. If you have any questions about how to do that, just let me know. But for the sake of time here, so this is still loading here. So I'm going to just go back to this and talk about a few other things that we're going to want to take a look at and think through. So you're looking at terrain, and what that basically talks about is making sure that you have an idea based off of the terrain data on the map. So if you go up and hit terrain data here, you turn that on. It's basically the topography, and it gives you an idea of what slopes you might be seeing on site here. So, as you know, the closer topography lines are to each other, the steeper the slope. So, in this situation, you have an idea that in their backyard, they actually have a pretty steep slope going back towards the waterway here, and it looks like you're probably going to be having some water coming away from the neighbors' houses here, going into your neighbor's yard. So this is still loading, of course, unfortunately. But as you folks should know from your GIS training, that you can get the parcel size on your SStat information. You can also go up to tools here, and under measure, if you use polygon, you can actually measure the parcel size by hand. So what I'm doing right now for the sake of time is just tracing the four corners of our site, and that's going to spit out an area of about 11,500 square feet. So if SStat's acting up as it sometimes does, then I'm just going to do that, and then I'm just going to go back to our parcel size and just put in our 11,500 square feet. Land cover, you can kind of see if you have the layers off. It's not the best ortho or satellite image here. Um, I'm going to clear all of that. Give me 1 second. So I just cleared all of that so that I can see what's going on here. But you can see that there's some trees here. There's a tree here. You can also go to Google Maps and get the information from there. They have a typically leafed out tree thing. So I can tell already that it's going to be a little bit more woodsy in the backyard here. So it looks like the SStat information can't be reached right now. But like I said, just measuring it kind of free form is just as fine for the purposes of this. As I mentioned earlier, you also want to look at storm drain infrastructure. As you'll remember from your training, that's under utilities. You can turn on all of these guys, and that will start to tell you what's going on here. So you can see that there's sewer lines here, there's water lines here, so that again reinforces the idea that this is city or county water and sewage. You can see there's some storm inlets kind of down the street from the house, but there's really nothing on site here that we need to really take note of. Um, and from there, I'm going to think about what I want to have on my map to take out the site. So I want to zoom in just a little bit. um, we have the site highlighted there because the parcels are highlighted. So I'm going to turn that off and turn that back on. Um, I like to have an ortho map, so this is probably a good place to start for that. I'm going to turn off all the other utilities here, so that it's just a clean map that just shows the satellite image of the whole site here. I'm going to go up to Tools. I'm going to hit Print. It's thinking. So as you'll remember, I can move this if I unlock the print screen here. I typically like to have the site kind of centered on the map that I'm producing so that it's easy to read. So that's pretty close there. I'm going to have it print out an 8.5 by 11. I'm going to have it be a PDF so it's easy to print. I like to have a little bit more DPI so it's not pixelated. I'm going to title this RSA Ortho Map, and then I'm going to hit print. So once that map is ready, you'll see that it's produced a PDF here. Sorry that everything's going a little slow here today. So you can see our map is ready to go here. I would download this and save it so it's easy to print. The other thing that I'm going to do is also create a JPEG of this, and that'll become important a little bit later when we're talking about the Rainscaping action diagram generator. This will become your base map um, for um, for that process. So I'm going to hit print here. Again, it produces another map, but this time it's a JPEG. You can right click and then save the image as somewhere on your desktop or wherever you would like to put it so that you know where it's at for the next couple steps. Oh, So just like that. And then the last thing, for the purposes of going out on site here, I'm going to go back to my map. And what I'd like to have is a map that gives me some blank space to write on. So going back to the layer list, what I typically do for this one, I'm going to shut the STAT because I think that's slowing me down here. I'm going to keep the parcels on. I'm going to go the whole way down to the bottom and turn off the ortho. It's good because this is still highlighted, so you know which section you're looking at. I'm going to turn on the impervious surfaces, so that gives you an idea of the building and the driveway and all of that. And typically for this map too, I like to turn on utilities and the terrain data. So again, this isn't as dark as maybe the ortho. This gives you some white space to write on. So once this is kind of generated and ready to go, I'll go back to tools. I'm going to hit print. I'm going to try to center my map again, kind of on that parcel. I'm going to keep it as a PDF for now, and then I'm going to change the title of this to the RSA. Let's call it. Let's just call it the RSA map for now. So I'm going to hit print. I'm going to open that file. Again, it's spit out a PDF that you can download and print. You have all of your legends here for what is kind of spit out here, but it also gives you some blank space to take some notes. But really, you should be taking both your kind of ortho-free map and your ortho map out on site with you. These are good places to start as you're kind of thinking through what your actual site assessment is going to look like. This will be the end of this presentation. The next presentations that you're going to be looking at or watching are two great videos that are going to walk you through the site assessment and the resident interview. Thanks.